Awesome. So everyone, thank you for joining us today. We're so excited to have this event and get us started. Welcome to startUp, our entrepreneurship exploration event for youth. My name is Kristen. I am the Youth Engagement and Events Coordinator here at FirstWork. I'll be your host and monitor for today's event. For those of you who haven't attended an Aspire event before, Aspire is our career exploration event for our career exploration initiative put on by our team here at FirstWork. We know how difficult it is to figure out what jobs opportunities are out there and where they can take you in terms of a career. So exploration is really important because we don't know what we don't know. And that's why we at FirstWork put on these exploration type of events so that young people like yourselves can find out what's truly out there when it comes to paying your bills or even finding a passion within a job. Just want to let everyone know that Aspire is funded in part by RBC Future Launch. And so our $50 gift card giveaways are courtesy of their support. In order to be included in the draw to win, you must complete the RBC survey and you must be present during the announcement in order to receive your prize. We'll provide more details later on today. But before we officially get started, I will pivot to Sophia to provide a land acknowledgement for our virtual meeting as we're here on treaty lands.
Before we begin, we humbly acknowledge that we are on treaty lands. We acknowledge that we are on a land and surrounded by water originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, treaties between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, Huron, Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We wish to express gratitude to Mother Earth and for the resources we are using, and honor all the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people who have been living on the land since time immemorial.
Thank you, Sophia. So, day one, startup. Today's session, we are focusing on the foundations of entrepreneurship. So what problems can you solve that put money in your pockets? We have 3 speakers today who have successfully pivoted their businesses during the last year and have found new ways to thrive in our new reality. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Joelle Zola of Street Voices. We also have Susan Tung of Hanoi House in Peterborough and Oisin Glass of House of Glass. Welcome, everyone. Joel, I'd like to start. If you can kick us off with an introduction to yourself, that would be great.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Zola. I am the founder of Street Voices. Street Voices is a platform that I started 7 years ago while being a homeless youth. I realized there's a lack of needs for street-involved youth. A lack of platforms. So my solution was to create one. We have since expanded online. We are currently working on a directory to help people find free services. And there's obviously a longer version of the spiel, but I don't know how long I have. So I'm just gonna give everybody the 30-second version. And I'm happy to be here and looking forward to sharing this panel with everybody else here.
Awesome, thank you. Can't wait to hear more about your journey. Susan, excited to hear more about you and Hanoi House.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Tong. I live in Peterborough. That's just an hour outside of Toronto. And I opened Hanoi House in February of 2020, just 1 month before COVID really shut everything down. And, we closed for a little bit just because of everything happening. And we reopened the business in April of last year. Since then, all I've known is operating my business under COVID. I do have a lifetime of experience in the restaurant industry, growing up in a family restaurant. And I also used to run bars and clubs in Toronto as well. And I ended up back in Peterborough. So the restaurant industry was not new to me. And like I said, we pivoted and I was actually able to open a second location in December. So now I've got 2 restaurants. And I'm really happy to be here and share my experience of what it's like to be not only a businesswoman, but a restaurant owner during this time. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're so lucky to have you here at our event. Last but not least, I want to pivot it to Oishin from House of Glass. Take it away.
Hey guys, my name's Oishin. My pronouns are they, them. I run a clothing label called House of Glass. My wife and I hand make gender neutral or unisex garments in our studio in Toronto, and then we sell them online. We're in a similar situation to Susan, that we've never really known a world of operating our business outside of COVID. And we've been quite lucky actually under COVID, because we can make masks, which have been a great kind of gateway product to let people know about our brand. Yeah, I'm really excited for today to get to know you guys and field some questions from you and have a chat. Pumped to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to thank all 3 of you for joining us here today. Let's kick off our panel discussion. I want to open this question up to all of our speakers. Take us through your starting point of becoming an entrepreneur. What was the first step you took when creating your business? Oishin, we can start with you.
So I don't have personally a background in fashion. I was working in hotels. I was managing hotels. And then really abruptly, the hotel that I was working for got bought over by another chain and I lost my job. My wife is a tailor and has been working in fashion for about 15 years. She currently works on Star Trek. And she asked me when I lost my job, what do you want to do? What's the next step? Do you want to go back and do what you were doing before? And I really didn't. I didn't feel like I was living my most authentic self when I worked those jobs. I was still using pronouns. I was still using she, her pronouns. I didn't feel comfortable in my skin in my work. And I needed and really wanted the independence of being an entrepreneur. So my wife taught me to sew. She taught me everything from the ground up. And together we designed clothes that me as a non-binary person would want to wear, and that fixes a lot of the problems that come from being forced to buy gendered clothing. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. Now we have a wee studio and we make this wearable art together, and it's our wee family business, and it's incredible. It's amazing. But yeah, my background wasn't in fashion really at all until my wife took me under her wing and kind of taught me everything that she knew.
Awesome. And I guess I can pivot it over to Joelle. What was your starting point in launching Street Voices?
I always say I got into entrepreneurship by accident, because I never viewed myself as an entrepreneur at the beginning. I think when I was younger, I always wanted to be an artist, because I'm a very creative mind. And I used to write a lot of poetry. So basically, when I got kicked out the house, I was basically a homeless poet that was looking for a platform. So I realized that the people around me who were also creatives also didn't have a platform. So the solution was to basically create our own platform, and that became Street Voices. So we had this idea to basically start a magazine that was by street kids for street kids. So then after we started the magazine, it was oh, okay, well, we got to make money. And then when that thought came, that's when I officially, I guess, became an entrepreneur. So yeah, so I guess the journey's been accidental. I never knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I consider myself a social entrepreneur. And the reason why is because what motivates me is not really making $1 billion. What motivates me is literally changing the world and making it a better place. And yeah, so here I am, and that's my story.
Awesome. Awesome. Great story. Susan?
Yeah, so for myself, I've always had this battle between choosing a career that was safe, stable. I actually wanted to be a doctor growing up, but my passion was always in the hospitality industry, having grown up in the industry with my family business. And when I moved back to Peterborough, my parents had actually sat me down and told me that this was simply not a career that I should pursue, just because, you know, it is low paying, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of hours. And at that point, I really did throw in the towel with chasing my own dreams. And then one day, I actually saw like a Steve Jobs quote about, following your passion, and, your work is going to make up a lot of your life, and you need to really love what you do, and, kind of the rest will follow. So it was really from then on that I decided to follow what I wanted to do. And I was actually finishing a degree in teaching because that was the stable job I went with. And yeah, I completed my teaching degree while opening my restaurant at the same time. So it was simply just a moment where I had to just make a choice, and, and I'm really glad that I got to do, and I chose that path.
That's really great. I want to continue with you, Susan. So as we all know, the hospitality and restaurant industry has been hit exceptionally hard during this time. How have you personally adapted your business during this pandemic, and especially with the fluctuating rules and restrictions that have been given to us?
Yeah, so I mean, there is one constant that has, remained, was that we can do takeout and delivery. So from the time we reopened in April, I just focused all our efforts on takeout. So all our social media, I always post photos of our food in takeout format. This is how it looks. This is what you get when you take it home. This is how you eat it. Because not only was I starting a new business, I was actually introducing Vietnamese food to Peterborough. Peterborough, for anyone that doesn't know, is a very meat and potatoes town. So I had multiple challenges ahead of me. So I really had to kind of visually show people what our food was and how to eat it. And social media has also been incredible for building my reach and marketing. Not only has it helped me reach new customers, but it actually helps me communicate with existing customers. So when there are customer issues, maybe something wasn't in their order, or whatever maybe, they can actually just message me on Instagram, goes right to my phone, and I respond right away. And people love that automatic customer service, whereas like you don't get that with like a Wendy's or Boston Pizza and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've constantly been pivoting, and I've even ran some pop-ups with some friends that have come in and use my kitchen to sell things, and just constantly doing things that are different and keeping people's attention, really.
That's awesome. We're definitely going to come back to you. Just want to pivot to Oisin. Oisin, when we first chatted, you indicated that you took on a second job to increase your human interaction. Can you tell us a little bit more about this choice and how else you set boundaries to avoid burnout?
Yeah, so I also have a background in hospitality, obviously, from working in restaurants, and that means that a lot of my workday was spent talking to people, like talking to customers or talking to other members of my team. Yeah, all day long. I just never shut up. And I found it really, really isolating to be in a studio on my own with nobody to talk to, nobody even just to pass the time of day with. And I found that it was just making me a bit insular, and it wasn't making me excited to be creative. I wasn't excited to go and sit in my studio. I felt lonely in there sometimes. So I have a wee job just 2 days a week at Cocktail Emporium down on Queen and Ossington that like taps into my knowledge that I built up over years in the hospitality industry and a career that I was really passionate about. So I get to still talk shop and talk to all the bartenders and talk to all the new home bartenders and about something that's completely unrelated from House of Glass and what I would consider my more creative outlook or output, sorry. So yeah, I hang out at Cocktail Emporium just like a couple of days a week, and I like work with another wee Scottish guy. It's the best thing ever. Like we tell all the customers that it's our family business. It's not. Yeah, just to get out of the house, and I think it really has made me much more passionate about the work that I do for my own business, to have a reprieve a couple of days a week where I'm a cog in the machine of somebody else's business instead of that like burden of responsibility to just be in charge of myself. And it's also just good for a wee bit of pocket money, which is nice. Yeah.
Awesome. Joelle, learning about your story is incredibly inspiring. We wanted to know, how were you able to take your hardships and turn them into opportunities to help those who may be going through the same thing that you once went through?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me, I've always kind of seen myself as a problem solver. And if I wasn't a homeless youth, I probably wouldn't have been aware of the fact that there's a problem of our voices not being heard. So I think for me, it's like I just was driven by solving that problem. And one of the major issues, besides our voice not being heard, was when you're living on the streets, you have to rely on free services for survival: free food, free clothing, free healthcare. And I realized that there was a bunch of these free services, but knowledge of these services was very scarce. It was very like referral, word of mouth, etc. So in the magazine, we actually put a listing of free services in the back of it. And we're currently working on a full out directory app, which gonna help people find free services. So this should launch in the summertime. And yeah, so even starting Street Voices as a homeless youth, like I said, it was something where I was driven by the vision. I didn't even know how we were gonna make money. I didn't even know that a thing called grants existed. So yeah, so basically I eventually found out about the not-for-profit sector and how to raise money in the not-for-profit sector. So I basically turned it into a job, and I eventually escaped homelessness. And yeah, so I guess She Voices was very passionate. I feel like I'm the first homeless youth that's kind of escaped the situation, and then we hope to create a platform that can help the next generation of homeless youths. So I don't even know if I even answered your question directly. I was just speaking from, I guess, the heart. So, and so somebody asked the question, where can we find the magazine? So our magazine, we don't do print no more. If you go to streetvoices.ca under magazines, you can find all of our, yeah. So thank you, Sophia, for plugging the website. Thanks. Cool.
Awesome. Okay, so for the next question, I want to bring it back to Susan. You've mentioned the lack of support from family members when it came to opening your restaurant, especially since it is a male-dominated industry as well. How did you kind of overcome those obstacles, and what advice do you have to youth for exploring that opportunity?
Yeah, it is really hard. You know, your parents, especially my parents, they're immigrants, so it's really hard when they've sacrificed so much and they just want you to do better than them. You know, my parents worked in our restaurant. They worked 6 days a week, but really it's 7, because when you own your own business, you don't actually like have a day off. So they simply just worked so that I wouldn't have to live that life. And, you know, it's hard because I chose to do exactly what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, we're like, you have to have like the right support system. So not having that support from my parents initially was really challenging, but at the same time, I like really knew I was kind of confident in what I was doing already. Um, I mean, the main support I got from my parents, I would have got from my parents would have been like financially. So what I did was I actually went and got a loan, like a bank loan, like a small bank loan to start off. Kind of went from there. Um, but yeah, I mean, eventually my parents did come around. They saw that my business worked. And actually, my second location is partially funded. I got a loan from my parents for the second location because they believed in my vision. And but ultimately, you kind of have to believe in yourself first because you always want to read these business books on how to do this, how to do that. But eventually, like you're going to read all these books, and it's not going to mean anything unless you actually do something about it. So. Hopefully I answered your question.
No, you 100% did. That's really, really, really great to hear. Oisin, want to pivot this question to you. During a time where there is maybe lack of resources and lack of funding available, how do you commit to staying true to your brand? When doing research on House of Glass, I know that you guys are very focused on sustainability and using not only sustainable products or materials in the fabrics when making your garments, but also when it comes to the packaging and the shipping that you guys use.
So we source all of our fabrics locally in Toronto. We don't buy fabric online. The name of the businesses that stock fabrics, they're called jobbers. And there's still a couple of pockets in Toronto that have kind of fabric districts. The one that we frequent the most is at Queen and Spadina. So we have a really good kind of working relationship with the guys that are there. And throughout the whole pandemic, kind of 3 of them come to mind that would like pick up the phone to us and let us know if something cool came into the shop and that we should come down and have a look at. So it's been remarkably easy for us to shop with them, either by appointment or for curbside pickup. Often I can like send them the specs of what I'm looking for and they can send me back a couple of options. So for working with our suppliers in Toronto, it hasn't been particularly challenging for us, which has been a massive relief. We also have a bit of a secret stockpile of fabric that we can work through ourselves, like just in storage, our own kind of private stash, because we're addicts and we pick up fabric all the time, everywhere and anywhere that we can. So yeah, we haven't really been hindered by any like supply chain issues particularly, because a lot of our pieces are one of a kind, and did have a little bit of concern about mailing some stuff out in case they went missing in the mail when the mail was really overwhelmed, kind of more last year. But touch wood, we continue to be lucky. We didn't experience anything getting lost in the mail. So yeah, like we are lucky in the sense that the way that our business was structured kind of right out the gate, just based on our own personal ethics of wanting to support local Toronto jobbers, wanting to be sustainable, wanting to be environmentally conscious, has meant that the way that the world kind of changed through COVID didn't really impact us very much because we had kept a really tight and small supply chain kind of anyway. Yeah, so we've been lucky.
Awesome. And Joelle, one question to you. Again, with lack of resources available, how were you able to get Street Voices off the ground and, as successful as it is today, especially given today's climate?
So are you asking me how we got off the ground from the beginning, or okay, cool. So
and
yeah.
You can also talk about how you were able to pivot.
Okay, for sure. So I think I think one big thing, I think Warren Buffett, he's a famous investor, he has a quote. He says, the best investment is yourself. So so to say, like, when I started Street Voices, it was only an idea, and I worked at a community center called Sketchworking Arts. And while I was being employed there, I basically obviously had no money to start Street Voices. So I used my first paycheck to basically fund the very first issue of the magazine. And then after we basically produced one issue of the magazine, funders saw it and they funded our future issues. So I think there's a lot of people who I've met who say, oh, I wish I can do what you do, but I don't have no grant funding. And my response to that is we started with no grant funding. So I guess to answer your question about how we got Streetwest off the ground is I literally volunteered my money and I also volunteered my time. We used to run workshops where I hired the facilitator and I was there as a volunteer because I cared more about getting Street Voices off the ground than I did about getting paid. And I would say it paid off, no pun intended. And yeah, so I would say that's how we got it off the ground. In terms of these modern times with the pandemic and everything, we definitely have been forced to do things more technological. I think my team and some of them are actually in the crowd right now. We've been basically interacting through Zoom, and we've just been having forced to adapt. We've been forced to adapt, and I think the pro of like a Susan or Ocean is that they started their business during these times, so it's not like they were in the old times and they had to pivot. They were prepared. So I think yeah, so I do feel like these times has been very unfortunate, but it's but for those entrepreneurs who start during this era, I do feel like we can thrive in the future. Yeah.
Awesome. So just before we pivot it to open Q&A with attendees, we want to open this last question up to all three speakers. It's April 2021, and we're continuing to navigate this new normal with, increased uncertainty. How are you all planning to move forward for the rest of the year and, the following year, 2022? Joel, we can start with you.
So how are we moving? She Wishes are going through a big transition where in a sense we're known for a magazine. We're even asked about the magazine, but we actually don't produce magazines no more, right? So but the new thing that we're launching is a web and mobile app that's going to help people find free services. So we're excited to launch this because we feel like we're making a huge pivot from this street youth-led magazine to a global directory that's going to help people find free services. So yeah, so that's what we're looking forward towards the future.
Awesome.
Yes, and the person who asked the question, will the app still host content? Yeah, we're not getting rid of the content, we're just expanding. So yeah, yes, the answer is yeah.
Great. Susan, what's new?
Well, for us, we've constantly kind of been growing. Our sales are increasing month by month. So at this point, I just really focus on the customers I have now and just continuing to grow our community. And that also involves training my staff, making sure that they are able to take on, more than one role at a time sometimes just because of there's less dine-in. So sometimes my servers have to do a little bit of prep as well, or, but it allows everyone to be very hands-on. And we're still growing and we're still learning internally. I'm still learning as a business owner now that I have 2 locations. It requires more systems in place to make sure things are running smoothly. So there really is never a dull day, and I'm still pushing takeout very strongly to my customers. At this point, there is one thing that is certain, is that nothing is guaranteed, right? So, you have to just rely on what you do know. And what I know is that I can still do takeout, I can still do delivery, and I can still communicate with my customers the best way that I know how. So.
Awesome. Last but not least, Oishin.
We've been very lucky that the fashion industry, I guess, has also pivoted due to COVID. So we have our first fashion show coming up at the end of May. It's all going to be virtual. It's part of Fashion Art Toronto. So they're a really established kind of outfit that puts on fashion shows in the city. They've been around for a couple of decades. So we're working with them. So that's great. Also, due to the pandemic, people are much more confident spending their money online because it hasn't been so easy to spend your money in a brick and mortar store. So yeah, we're seeing an uptick in our sales kind of month on month on month. So we're just hoping to keep building our community, keep making clothes for non-binary people that need non-gendered clothes, keep making our clothes as ethically as we possibly can and in line with our own kind of personal politics and beliefs. And yeah, that seems to just be catching the attention of the right people. So yeah, we're just looking forward to kind of going from strength to strength and continuing as we are. Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to now open it up to our audience now. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. I see 2 questions already. One is addressed to Joelle. What was your process for the layout and building the foundation? How did you manage your time and schedule?
Yeah, I'll definitely answer this question, but I'm also curious about Ocean and Susan as well, because
Yeah.
I'm always curious about like how other people manage their time. I'll be straight up honest. I was horrible at time management and I was extremely unorganized. I think the way I was able to overcome these things was by bringing people on that basically helped me with these things. So so I do have an administrative assistant who handles like my calendaring, my calendar, my scheduling, and sends me reminders. But I would say this is something that we're forever trying to figure out. I'm forever trying to like refine the process. And I think for us as Street Voices, it's just we've been fortunate enough to be able to make hires to outsource certain jobs. That was my job. But yeah, but I would say the short answer to the question is getting help. That's the short answer. Yeah.
Awesome. Susan, Oisin, feel free to answer that question too.
I'm a very type A person, so I live and breathe by my book, my bullet journal. So, you know, every day I try to be as organized as possible. The reason why I was able to build a restaurant and finish a degree at the same time was simply because I planned everything. I planned my days down, when I had class, when I had assignments due, when the flooring was getting done at the restaurant, when the inspector was coming. It was all written down. For everyone, it's a little bit different. I mean, some people like to plan things on their phone, but for me, like having it written on paper is really important. So you just kind of have to figure out what works for you and what helps you be organized in the best way possible.
I spent my first few months being my own boss, being really, really frustrated with myself. Because when I was people's employee, I was their best employee. I was there early, I stayed late, I would roll up my sleeves and do any job. And then when I was my own employee, I was terrible at it. I was late for everything. I was like completely unmotivated. I would lose hours of my life scrolling my phone. I would never have done that while I was on the clock for any of the bosses that I'd ever had previously. And I couldn't snap out of it. It was so frustrating. I was just losing days of my life and my business was totally stagnating. And what I kind of found in the end was that I needed to be really, really militant in scheduling my days. So every single day of the week, even if it's my day off, even if I'm not working for my business that day, even if I'm going into work at Cocktail Emporium or whatever I'm doing, I get up at 6 a.m. every single day. Because I need that. And that's not to say people who sleep until noon don't run successful businesses. I'm sure that they do, but I needed to implement a really hard and fast rule with myself to say to myself, like, you are your boss. You're wasting your time and you're your own employer. Like, you can be the best employee that your business has ever had. And I found that the answer to that for me was to be really, really structured in my time and to not give myself a pass. Yeah.
Awesome. Really, really great advice. We have a lot of questions coming into the chat. To everyone, this is from Caitlin. What traits or attributes do you think contributed to where you are now in terms of your business? Oisin, do you want to kick us off? And then we can go to Susan and then Joelle.
Yeah, so attributes or traits that contributed. When I first started my business, and you guys can scroll back on my Instagram, I haven't taken this down, I'm not trying to hide it. Everything was really clinical. I like picked up Photoshop for the first time, and I had all of our garments hung on a mannequin, and I was editing out all of the backgrounds so I could put them on a plain white background. And that was kind of how I presented my product to the world for like our first 9 months that we were in business. And then we had a big photo shoot planned for COVID, and it fell through, obviously, because of COVID, like around the start of COVID, sort of March last year. And it fell through, but we had all of these beautiful new garments that we had made for this photo shoot and no models to photograph the garments on. So my wife was like, let's just go and take photos of you and me in these clothes. And that at the time was really my worst nightmare, because I didn't want to be a model. That wasn't why I got into fashion, and I didn't want people to think that I was so big-headed that I thought I deserved to be a model. You know what I mean? But we went and we did it, and people just couldn't get enough of it. Like, people loved that we were just like normal people wearing these clothes that we had made, that we thought was a gap in the market. And now, kind of a year on from then, our whole business is about us. It's about us as people. We are our brand, our personality, our crazy cats, our industrial sewing machines in our bedroom, our wedding photos, how we met, the annoying things we say to each other, the fact that my wife doesn't know how to high five people, like all of this is our business. All of this is what people are buying into. All of this is what makes us a community. So I would say, and I think it's true, like of what I've seen of Susan and Joelle as well, of their businesses, that like a lot of what people are buying into are them, or us as people, or our personalities. Like at the end of the day, I sell clothes. You can buy a t-shirt off anybody. I'm not stupid. I know that. Like you can go and buy it for half the price at H&M. That's not what you're buying. You're buying me. So yeah, I think like don't make the mistake that I made and shy away from that for 9 months, because it's a massive waste of your time. If you're cool and you're cool enough to be the sort of person that takes risks and wants to be an entrepreneur, people want to know about you. They really, really do.
Yeah. Yeah, so like Oisin said, you know, people are buying into your brand. So I'm very much the face of my business, whether I like it or not. But one of the attributes that has really helped me is being transparent. So I really share a lot of my story with my customers. And my story is simply that, you know, I'm a minority female. Growing up in Peterborough, I was always different. And now I'm running a business as a minority. And a lot of people resonate with it because there are other people in this small town that are that feel the same way, or they are minorities as well. And people love the story, and they love that my family has, you know, had a business. My parents are now retired, and now I'm kind of following in their footsteps, but trying to make it my own at the same time. So yeah, and then with COVID, I've just been very transparent. You know, some days it's really quiet because it's COVID, and some days things are just, you know, going insane because it's so busy. It's a Friday night. All of a sudden, everyone wants takeout. But I create a lot of transparency with how I run my business as well. So, how I pay my staff, how I split our tips. So in the hospitality industry, tipping is like a very controversial subject. And I always tell everyone that we share our tips evenly amongst our staff. So commonly in a restaurant, the servers will get all the tips, but the way I run my business, I don't do that. It's actually split evenly. And people really believe in that, and they love it because it just creates a sense of equity in the business. The other attribute that I think is really important is just being very caring and kind, not only to my employees, but to the customers as well. Just kind of going above and beyond, like showing that level of hospitality. It is a little bit harder when you're only doing takeout and you don't interact with people as much, but you do see the same names coming in for orders and the same faces coming in to pick up their orders. So you can kind of establish a bit of a relationship with these people. With my staff, I have very low turnover. Often when I have staff leaving my crew, it's because they're moving home or they're finishing school and they're doing something else now. But I create a very strong sense of a family and tight-knit crew. And yeah, part of that is just being caring and being understanding to everyone's situations.
For me, I would say the trait that got me to where I am today is stubbornness. And I say that because when I started Street Voices, I was basically in the youth shelter and I told everybody that I met about my idea. And I felt like I got mixed reactions. I got some people who are like, that's a great idea, but I got a lot of people who thought it was a bad idea. So there's people who would tell me things like, you should probably focus on going to school, or they'll tell me things like, you should probably get a job, or they'll tell me things like, a magazine, you don't even know how to make a magazine, all these things. So but for me, I think for me is I had the vision and I saw where it was important. People even will say things like, how is that going to make money, right? But for me, like I said at the beginning, I didn't really have a vision for making money. For me, it was more like, this is important and our community needs this. So yeah, I think a few people when I started thought I was crazy. But because we've done so much as an organization, I feel like I have less people that doubt me, at least to my face. But I can say that when you're starting out and if anybody has an idea, there's going to be a lot of objections from close friends, from family. But what I can say is that if you truly believe in what you're doing, then just go for it and don't care what anybody says.
Love that. Love it, love it. We have another question to all of our speakers. When you are feeling unmotivated, what are some things you can do to provoke inspiration? Yeah.
Can I tackle this one first?
Yeah.
I was talking to another entrepreneur friend of mine about this recently, because we both have what we call like our motivation outfit. And it's like, for me, it's just a horrible old gross turtleneck sweater that I have and a pair of like jeans that I've just destroyed, but they look so artistic and cool because I've destroyed them with art. And when I put them on, I feel like, yeah, I'm ready to create. Like, this is my uniform, but I can't do anything if I'm not wearing my shoes. I have to wear my shoes. Can't get anything done in socks, man. Nothing. So yeah, I think for me, it's like I have to like get dressed and take it seriously as if I'm going into a place of employment. Like I can't turn up in the burrito sweatshop in my like trainers kind of, without my trainers on rather. So yeah, I like care about getting myself up, getting myself dressed, having a cup of coffee, like putting on some tunes, and getting myself like really into the headspace. And I think that ritual as well, like it's not just like putting on my shoes and putting on my creative jeans and putting on tunes. It's about that whole ritual of doing all of those things in order gets me into the frame of mind of like, now you're going to work. Like now you're going to put your phone away for a few hours and you're going to sit down in front of your sewing machine and finish off whatever you need to get finished. So yeah, I think like rituals actually really helps. Rituals is the answer, not just putting your shoes on. Yeah.
Susan, want to go next?
Hey, sorry about that. Funny enough, I was actually just thinking about this. Oops. Just thinking about it this morning, like this question. I was actually listening to a podcast, and January and February were very depressing. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like for everyone, with the cold months and being in lockdown all the time, just not knowing what was going on, I went into a bit of a rut. Every day for me, I was just doing the same thing over and over again. Wake up, open the restaurant, work, hope for customers, and keep building the business, and then close the restaurant, go home, go to bed, and literally do that over and over and over again. Now that the weather's getting better, like I'm starting to feel better, probably like most people as well. But yeah, I was thinking about the inspiration question this morning, and what's really helped me a lot is surrounding myself with like-minded people. But lately that's been hard too, because I feel like everyone is feeling really down. So the other thing I've started doing is listening to more podcasts and really watching different like videos online, like YouTube cooking videos, or looking at what other restaurants are doing like in the States. So because I run a Vietnamese restaurant, I follow a whole bunch of other Vietnamese restaurants on my Instagram. So I'm always looking at what they're doing, and that has really helped like immensely. But yeah, really, you have to really make an effort to stay inspired, because it's really easy to just wake up and do the same thing over and over again if you become complacent with what's happening. So that's me.
I would say what motivates me, a lot of similar answers to Susan, podcasts, other entrepreneurs. I feel like Susan and Ocean themselves motivate me. And I think the reason why is because this is a pandemic, and obviously things like the restaurant history got hit. And you still see Susan, she's here, she's present, she's going, she's pushing her business. So I feel like just seeing action and seeing movement, because obviously this has been hard times for a lot of people going through depression, and but seeing people who are still moving motivates me. So yeah.
Love it. Another question. I understand that starting your venture could be the hardest part, and you probably weren't as knowledgeable as you are now. And what do you guys account that to? Would you say that it's all about continuous learning, i.e. avid readers, podcasts, news, talking to people, or just being confident in going through the motion and starting your business? Great question. Joelle, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I feel like being confident is a double-edged sword. Because one, you obviously do need confidence and belief in yourself, but then at the same time, like the other part of the question in terms of learning is also what got me here. I think for me, because to be an entrepreneur, first of all, you need to have some level of ego, because obviously you feel like you're the one to solve the problem that you're solving. That's why you're doing it. But then at the same time, you also need to know when to put down that ego. And I think, yeah, so adding on to the continuous learning, I network with people who started their own non-for-profits, and I just asked a lot of questions, and I just absorbed a lot of information. So I think the answer is a mixture of both. It's just knowing when to be confident and knowing when to be a student.
So I'm going to chime in on that. The whole ego thing really resonates with me. In the restaurant industry, we commonly deal with people that have a lot of egos, especially in the kitchen. If you look at the celebrity chefs, like the whole Gordon Ramsay persona, like that's real. Like people are actually like that in this industry. And I think part of my restaurant success is that it's women owned and women led. So like my executive chef is also female as well. And yeah, so knowing when to be confident, but also be humble at the same time. So when my restaurant first opened, it didn't do well. Like my reviews were terrible. Things were just not perfect yet. And one thing you have to understand, if you guys choose to open your own business or open a restaurant, your first month, even 6 months, first year, you're probably going to suck. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be the way you imagine it to be. You're not going to be like a celebrity chef instantly. It takes a lot of work and a lot of feedback. You have to kind of understand what people want and listen to their advice. Sometimes there are people out there that will just tell you advice without any backing and whatever, but kind of knowing which advice to listen to and which to kind of stay away from at the same time is really important. But ultimately, you really need to know why you're doing what you're doing. So for me, like, I really wanted to bring Vietnamese food, authentic Vietnamese food, to Peterborough, which, like I said, is a meat and potatoes town. And that was my mission. So I did that. And then there were certain things that people felt like I could do better. And I actually took their feedback and I just kept tweaking and tweaking. And now I get really great reviews. My customer service is amazing. Yeah, our feedback is really positive now. And it just has a lot to do with me being willing to accept the advice from my customers. Yeah, so having an ego is important, but also not having an ego is also very important.
Yeah, I totally agree with what's already been said. I think that there's a big difference between being confident and being hubristic. So it's important to be confident, absolutely, but to be humble and to know where maybe you have something to learn is always great. And then lastly, like for me and my personal journey, one thing that I've really realized gave us a bit of a head start and kind of helped us be successful in a smaller period of time and have less of a learning curve was that because my wife has been a tailor for a really, really long time, she knows the metrics of when we're making money and when we're not. So like she knew if you're going to make a sweater, it should take you this many hours to make a sweater. It should take you this many hours to make a pair of pants. And then we can price everything accordingly. And being good at that math right out the gate before we started selling anything so that we didn't have to change our prices or kind of double back on ourselves and be like, no, we thought we could make that for cheap, but we have to make it for expensive because we can't eat. Not having to make those big changes really helped our like image and made us look professional kind of right out the gate. So I think that like sitting and just understanding your math is really invaluable and really, really important. Like know your numbers off the top of your head. And it's not to say that you have to be a mathematics or a business professor. Just know what things cost you, know what you're selling them for, and be hyper vigilant about how much of your actual time is spent on that item as well, because you have to charge for your time. That's the whole point. So yeah, I feel like just having a little bit of a head start, having that information in our back pockets due to our own work experience before we started our business just was a game changer. A lot of people, I think, lose a lot of money and lose a lot of time not understanding that sort of mathematics. So yeah, sit with your numbers, crunch them, ask somebody to look over them for you if you feel like it's beyond your personal scope. But I think it's a really, really important thing to understand. Yeah.
Love that. We have one question directed to Oisin. This is from Tamara. I'm currently working on developing a jewelry line that focuses on divine femininity, but I wanted to make sure we cater to all genders who want to tap on that ethereal level. As a non-binary person, do you have any tips on how I can better market my business to cater to everyone?
So it's hard for me to speak on behalf of all non-binary people, because what I consider inclusive or what feels inclusive for me doesn't necessarily feel inclusive for everybody. That's just the nature of humans. I will say, however, that just like dealing with anything like that head on and just explicitly saying like, I want to make sure that my brand is inclusive of all gender identities, all gender expression, all people are welcome here. having the guts just to explicitly say that is something that I would have a lot of respect for, that would encourage me to shop with your brand, that would make me personally feel included. Obviously, when you're dealing with femininity as a concept and divine femininity, like, I love femininity, I love women, I'm not put off by it or scarred by it, or it's definitely something I understand and I would be passionate about and be enthused by. Obviously, for some other non-binary people, femininity is something that they're really running away from, or they're not interested in, or they don't relate with. So just to like be aware of that and take it on the chin, and that, like, yeah, like, you can't please all of the people all of the time. Just be honest about the space that you're creating and the fact that it's safe. And I think the people that are looking for the sort of space that you're providing will find you.
Great answer. So we're now approaching 2 p.m. Open networking is going to be starting momentarily. If we can just have our panelists say, to wrap up this session, what are some, final words? You're still going to get a chance to network with our speakers on a one-on-one level in our open networking platform on WinterMe. But since we're all here right now, what are some final words that you can offer potential youth entrepreneurs who are here on this call?
Okay, I guess I'll kick off with this one here. One thing I love about being an entrepreneur is I essentially curate my life. I am always working, but at the same time, I have a very flexible schedule too. For example, I'm able to do this right now in the middle of the day because I'm able to schedule my staff to cover the restaurant. I can leave early if I want, but I just got to do I was up at 7 a.m. today working. So you get to curate your life essentially, and you're responsible for your success, but you're also responsible for your failure. And secondly, you get to pick the people around you. You get to create your team. You get to hire the people that work with you or work for you. So ultimately, like, you have so much power, even just as young people, but as an entrepreneur, I love what I do, but I understand that it's not for everyone as well. And sometimes that responsibility of having to pay other people's bills, it's not for everyone. It can be very stressful. I have 20 staff members, so that can be financially a burden, because not only do I have to pay my own bills, my restaurant's bills, I have to pay the bills for my staff as well. So before you ask yourself if you want to be an entrepreneur, understand the responsibility you're taking on, but it is so worth it. And, I love what I do. And if you have any questions, I look forward to hearing them from you guys.
And for me, I would say my general advice is just, why do you want to do it? I think that's really big. I think if you just say, I want to be an entrepreneur just so I can make money, I feel like that can only go so far. And I feel like if you're driven by solving a problem, or if you're driven by passion, that's going to take you a lot farther. And that's what's going to motivate you when the times are down. So I think for me, I would emphasize that find a problem you want to solve, or find a passion that you want to tackle, because that will keep you motivated always. And I think going back to Street Voices in our directory, I come from Congo, and Congo is one of the poorest countries in the world. So free services in Congo is the difference between life and death. And my goal is to eventually expand our directory over to third world countries so we can help those people out. And things like that motivate me a lot faster than other things, and it keeps me going when I'm down. So I would say just have a why. And if you can find a great why, it'll keep you going.
I have to agree with really both of the answers that the other two speakers provided, that like it's important to have a good why. My why is so that I can be the most authentic person that I can possibly be. I don't want to go back to working for middle-aged, white, cisgendered men that won't get my pronouns right and don't respect me. I don't want to do that. And I also don't like seeing fashion where all of the unisex clothing is boring. Like I want to give people like me something fun to wear. And that's my reasoning, much more than the fact that I want to be the next Christian Dior. You know what I mean? And then Susan's totally right. Your time is invaluable. Even when you have a job and someone else is your boss, they're paying you for your literal time. You never get that back. So like, that's the end goal in being your own boss. That's the real gift. That's the real payout, right? So like, just keep that in perspective as well, I guess. Like, it isn't really about the cold hard cash. It's about being able to speak to a group of kids like you guys on an idle Monday afternoon, right? It's having that time for that community. So yeah, just like keep things in perspective. Crunch your numbers, so important. Please crunch your numbers. And like, yeah, have a good why. That's a really important one.
Awesome. Thank you to the three of you. We're still going to continue networking and speaking to Susan, Oisin, and Joelle. In the second half of the event, I'm just going to bring on Sophia to provide instructions on what to expect.
Hello, everyone. Wow, thank you to our panelists. What an incredible conversation. I feel so inspired, but I don't have a problem to solve or a why just yet. So I'll put my entrepreneurship dreams on hold and continue my work at First Work. So we're going to be transitioning to the WonderMe platform. Before we go over, we, as mentioned at the beginning, we are funded in part by RBC Future Launch. And so at this time, I am going to ask everyone to complete a quick survey. I'm just popping the survey link into the chat. It should just take about 5 or so minutes for everyone to complete. And I know surveys are not the most fun. They are not engaging or nearly as engaging as our panelists. But I will indicate that if you are looking to be entered into the draw to win, you must complete the survey. And the way that we are tracking that is that you are going to take a screenshot upon completion, and you're going to email that over directly to me so I can put you into the draw to win. So the survey is there. I am staying on this Zoom platform to ensure that anyone that has any questions with the survey can be answered by myself. And as folks transition over, I'll make sure that you're not left alone in a room. I will be here.